Welcome to our Wednesday night study again. We want to thank everyone for joining in, and I also want to make a special thanks to those who have been praying for me, sending me cards, sending me letters. I really appreciate that, and we thank you for that. All right, let's go right into the news. This one came out this week. It says this: what founding fathers' warnings mean for today's presidential candidates. At the 1776 Constitutional Convention held in Philadelphia, Benjamin Franklin felt the turmoil of the new republic, and he made a motion. Let me read it to you. I therefore beg to leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business, and that one or more of the clergy of this city be requested to officiate in that service. This from a man widely viewed as a deist rather than an Orthodox Christian. But even Benjamin Franklin recognized his nation's urgent need for divine guidance and strength. Others, however, did not at that convention. One delegate remarked that the convention had no money to hire a chaplain, and the assembly adjourned without voting on the motion. While the Constitutional Convention did not formally endorse Mr. Franklin's recommendation, another founder, typically thought to be a deist also, might have. Consider the theology espoused in our Declaration of Independence, authored primarily by Thomas Jefferson. It speaks of the laws of nature and of the nature of God. It claims that men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. It appeals to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, and it closes with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. In fact, as president, Jefferson issued a prayer for the nation in 1801 in which he asked God to, quote, save us from violence, discord, and confusion, and from pride. Man, do we need that today. From arrogance and from every evil way. Both he and Franklin were right. Fallen humans need help beyond ourselves to become the people capable of independence. Monarchies such as the one from which we rebelled, England, typically believed in divine rights of kings to rule over their lesser subjects. Atrocities are typically ruled by dictators who consider themselves superior by virtue of religious office or personal attributes. By contrast, America's democracy is founded on the belief that all men are created equal. This means we are subject to no one by virtue of their innate superiority, but it also means that none of us is worthy of unaccountable authority over others. The fact that our founders recognized this paradox, truth, provides yet another reason that I am grateful to be an American. I just hope and pray that bullheaded leaders today would visit our forefathers' words of warning to this secular evil culture. Let me go a little further and tell you a little bit about Israel today. Obviously, a lot of hot things going on there. This one is, why do people still continue to believe the media lies about Israel? For months, Israel's refused and refuted libelous claims of famine in Gaza, as international organizations, especially the UN and the EU, give the false, malicious narrative that Israel was causing famine in Gaza and even using it as a weapon of war. Israel might have saved itself at the effort. No one was listening. Starvation, claimed EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell, is used as a weapon of war. Israel is provoking famine, he said, claiming that hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza were already experiencing famine, and that by July the figure would rise to more than 1 million. Famine is imminent, the IPC claimed. 1.1 million people, half of Gaza, experience catastrophic food insecurity. Israel was therefore met by a deluge of outrage and hate from the world community for supposedly causing this famine. But on June 4th, the UN concluded that the famine was no longer even plausible and had no supporting evidence. You don't hear that on the media. The UN also admitted that until now, there have only been 32 deaths in Gaza from malnutrition, and 28 of those were among children under 5 years old. No one, however, not the UN or the IC or the NGOs or all the media outlets that magnified the distribution of the lies, has ever admitted that they were wrong. On the contrary, on June 18th, the New York Times claimed that Gaza, quote, is facing extreme levels of hunger, end of quote, and they continued spreading the lie. The most recent IPC report, published on June 25th, concluded that the supply of food to Gaza had in fact increased, not decreased, in recent months, and that in this context, the available evidence does not indicate that famine is currently occurring. By comparison, more than 3 million children in Sudan are actually malnourished, and 250,000 are likely to die in the coming months. But you don't hear anything about that. In the UN's own admission, the war in Sudan is the war the world has either forgotten or ignored. About 222,000 severely malnourished children and more than 7,000 new mothers are likely to die in coming months if their nutritional and health needs remain unmet. Yet, the social media continues, and the media continues to harangue Israel and blame Israel when they're ignoring the other things happening around the world. The made-up Gaza famine is just the latest in a long string of fabrications demonizing Israel's military operations in Gaza. Data published by both the UN and COGAT, C-O-G-A-T, shows that as of April 4, 2024, approximately 6 months into the war, some 13,000 trucks of food have entered Gaza, which amounts to 272,000 tons of food, more than double the required amount, according to the WFP. So why the UN is acting as a Hamas spokesperson is really intriguing, at least officially. But nevertheless, it seems the main source for journalists reporting on Gaza casualties. Those reported casualty figures were claiming to be extremely high from the beginning, currently at more than 37,000, and almost always stated by Hamas, according to the honest reporting, that the overwhelming majority of the casualties, around 70%, were women and children. These numbers were unquestionably parroted by everyone, including all the UN bodies, the EU, the media, and the self-described human rights NGOs. Then in early April, Hamas conceded that its numbers were flawed. The Foundation for the Defense of Democracies wrote, the Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health said on April 6th that it had incomplete data for 11,371 of the 33,000 Palestinian fatalities it claims to have documented. The ministry notes that it considers an individual record to be incomplete and missing following the key data, identity numbers, full names, date of birth, date of death. So what happened is the fatalities from roughly 34,000 to roughly 24,000, they reduced, and alleged number of childhood casualties from 14,000 to 7,800. According to the IDF at the time, 14,000 of those 24,000 were Hamas terrorists, meaning that the actual number of civilian deaths was closer to 9,000. Civilians, though, in Palestinian context, at any rate, are a complicated issue. For one thing, many so-called civilians took part in the October 7th massacres alongside trained Hamas terrorists, making them, in effect, equivalent to Hamas. So finally, civilians play an active role in Hamas's war atrocities, not least as hostage keepers. The 4 hostages recently freed by Israeli forces were held in private homes, one of them owned by an Al Jazeera journalist. So the list goes on, but the defamatory falsehoods, even when conceded by Hamas and UN, continue to spread as part of a fabricated, malign narrative about Israeli war crimes and genocide. So the lies keep being made up by Hamas and the terror organization's supporters, and the media increasingly speds them. Large parts of the elites of the international community, including the UN and EU and the media, and countless human rights and NGOs, seem intent on aiding Iran and its proxies in their ambition to destroy the world's only Jewish state by perpetrating the lies and the false narratives. They feign stock when anti-Semitism reaches even higher peaks, such as, most recently, the gang rape of a 12-year-old girl in France only because she was Jewish. Hamas's tactics are now evidently being copied by adolescent boys on the streets of Europe. And evidently, no one cares. Let's go a little bit further in Israel. Can Israel afford to stand up to America? A very interesting article. As a matter of fact, if you read Psalm 124, 125, you'll find a little bit of this prophecy in it. There's no denying the severe tensions between Biden administration and the Israeli government over the war being waged in Gaza by Iran and its proxies. Last month, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly accused the United States President Joe Biden of withholding weapons and ammunition from the embattled Jewish state. 2 weeks later, Representative Michael McCullough, Republican from Texas, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said the U.S. was withholding from Israel no fewer than 7 weapon systems. Ever since October 7th, Palestinian Arab pogrom in southern Israel, America has been giving to Israel with one hand while chaining it with the other. The Biden administration has made Israel slow down in its attempt to destroy Hamas in Gaza, repeatedly forcing the Israelis into paralyzing ceasefire negotiations that have given Hamas the upper hand and insisting on humanitarian aid supplies, most of which were stolen by Hamas to strengthen nobody but themselves. Yet astoundingly, the Biden administration wants an empowered Iran to be a key pillar in the future architecture of the Middle East. That's ridiculous. It purports to believe this will produce stability. Iran will produce anything but stability. Accordingly, the U.S. is actually protecting Iran from Israel, the nation that the genocidal Iranian regime has sworn to exterminate. Even when Iran fired a barrage of rockets and drones at Israel in April, the U.S. stopped Israel from responding robustly. Earlier this week, the New York Times reported that Netanyahu has pushed Biden hard on the need to hit Iran and avoid looking weak. Let me be crystal clear, Biden was said to have told Netanyahu in a phone call. If you launch a big attack on Iran, you're on your own. You do this and I'm out. That's absolutely ridiculous. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has acknowledged that the evacuation of the north of Israel under daily Hezbollah rocket and missile attacks has meant Israel has shrunk geographically. Yet he behaves as if this intolerable development emanates from Israel's actions in Gaza, and that a ceasefire there would put Hezbollah back in its box. These guys are unbelievable in their logic. According to the U.S. is solemnly negotiating with Hezbollah, just as it negotiated with Iran. The Bidenites really believe the genocidal fanatics can be reasoned out of their intention to murder, destroy, and conquer. Let me tell you, that's beyond grotesque. Hezbollah has to be neutralized, but as now stated, if Israel launches an all-out war against it, this will be a war with Iran. The only way through this nightmare is to strike the head of the snake itself in Tehran. Israel cannot afford to wait until Haifa or Tel Aviv starts sustaining massive casualties from Hezbollah's vast arsenal of Iran itself, 100,000 precision missiles. Faced with such an enemy, a preemptive strike that gains an initiative is absolutely essential. But for that to happen, Israel needs America. And it's far from clear that the Biden administration will come to Israel's aid, even in a war limited to Hezbollah, but in which Iran would unleash itself along with its proxies in Iraq, Yemen, and the disputed territories of Judea and Samaria. Against this dire backdrop, Netanyahu is coming to America to address Congress. There are fears that he may repeat what such people believe was the harmful result he achieved when he addressed Congress in 2015 in an attempt to head off President Barack Obama's nuclear deal with Iran. Netanyahu decided to address Congress because an already virulent, hostile administration posed such a danger to Israel that he could not remain silent. In 2015, he had a moral duty to lay out for Congress and the American people the dire consequences of Obama's Iran deal. That warning had been amply borne out. In 2024, Netanyahu has a moral duty to explain to Congress and the American people the dire consequences of the Biden administration's appeasement of Iran. They are leading us into World War III. While Israel is fighting a war for its survival, unlike any since its foundation, and that the Seven Front War against it is merely the opening shot in Iran's war against America and the West. Iran will not be satisfied taking out Israel. What Netanyahu's critics fail to acknowledge is that he is a supremely cautious politician. He rarely airs his grievances with the United States in public. When he does so, it signifies desperation. It's because he feels he has no other option. It's why he outed the Biden administration for holding up the delivery of weapons essential to the war effort. And it's why he's beating a lonely path back to Congress once again. His intended audience isn't just the United States lawmakers. It isn't just the American people. It's also the Arab and Muslim world. The Obama-Biden strategy of appeasement empowered Iran, created conditions for October 7th pogrom, and it's leading the free world to absolute catastrophe. The question is not how Israel can afford to stand up to America. It's how can Israel afford not to. Let's go a little bit further and give you a little bit about economy. This one's shocking. The new standard for financial security in America, $186,000 per year. According to a stunning new survey that was just released, the annual income of at least $186,000 a year is required in order to feel financially secure in the United States today. Unfortunately, only 6% of American adults make that kind of money. So we have a major problem on our hands. Cost of living has become extremely painful, and millions of Americans are stressed out of their minds because their finances are such a mess. The ultra-wealthy have gotten a lot wealthier. The ranks of the poor have exploded, and the middle class has been absolutely eviscerated. Only a small segment of the population is living comfortably. The following comes from CBS News. Americans have a specific annual income in mind for what it would take to feel financially secure, according to a new survey from Bankrate. The magic number, $186,000 per year. I thought that anyone that earned over $100,000 a year was wealthy, but now it takes an income about 5 times that size in order to be considered wealthy. The survey found they believe that would need to earn $520,000 a year to qualify as wealthy. Meanwhile, cost of living just gets higher and higher and higher. As a result, the percentage of Americans that admit that they're experiencing financial stress just continues to grow up. 35% of Americans are worried about making ends meet. 35%. At this point, even many that are considered to be in the upper income groups feel forced to take on extra jobs just to make ends meet. People are feeling so much anxiety about their finances, and that helps to explain why economic issues are playing such a prominent role in this election cycle. Some Americans are trying to make ends meet by cutting back anywhere they can, and one of the places they're doing it is in giving to charities. When times get tough, people become less generous. So what will happen when economic conditions become extremely harsh? BCA Research Chief Global Strategist Peter Brezin is warning that another recession is coming and that the stock prices could fall soon by 30%. Will he be proven correct? Oh, I don't know. But I do know that it feels like a recession has already arrived to many Americans. Every day, we get more bad economic news. For instance, Fox Business just published an article about how major drugstore chains are in the process of closing down locations from coast to coast. Walgreens announced it would close a significant number of underperforming stores across the United States due to ongoing challenges with profitability and declining margins. Rite Aid announced that 27 locations in Michigan and Ohio have been added to the growing number of stores it plans to close while it restructures under Chapter 11 bankruptcy. In large cities all over the nation, thousands upon thousands of commercial properties are now sitting empty. Of course, this is just a start. As the globe is rocked by one chaotic crisis after another, things will get a lot worse. A perfect storm is now upon us, and most people have absolutely no idea how harsh conditions around us will soon become. Most people have hidden their heads in the sand, and they won't know until the crisis actually hits. But it's on the way. Everybody's telling us, all the indicators are there. Let me go a little bit to war and tell you what's happening there. Another area that's not really a peaceful way to give you in the news tonight. This one says only a matter of time. ISIS-linked individuals stream over Biden's border. A startling new report has revealed that an ISIS-affiliated smuggling network was able to slip over 400 individuals through the U.S. border on Biden's administration's watch, with the location of more than 50 of them right now unknown. Experts say the administration's open border policies are vastly increasing the likelihood of a major terrorist attack occurring on U.S. soil. That's great, isn't it? 3 U.S. officials told NBC News that 150 of the individuals have been arrested, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, is currently attempting to locate the remaining persons. These people are ISIS operatives. They're here as a cell group. We know they're here. They can't find them. U.S. military forces are gravely concerned by the current heightened risk of terrorist attacks against targets inside the United States and both U.S. and allied interests abroad. President Joe Biden's decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Afghanistan is particularly catastrophic. The United States has lost significant intelligence collection capabilities in the area and in the region, leaving federal authorities blind and deaf to emerging threats emanating from the region. We would know before Afghanistan, before we pulled out, we would know who was coming here. They would already be told by our agents on the ground there. Now we're in the dark. This risk is compounded by the developments in the Middle East and the porous, unsecured southern border, through which we have seen numerous instances of individuals on the terrorist watch list group and others from adversarial countries attempting to enter the U.S. And those are the ones we know about, only because they were detected. We do not know how many other terrorists are already currently inside the United States. Joe Biden, listen to me, among other things, is our greatest security risk. Lieutenant General William Boykin, 36-year Army veteran, was unsurprised by reports of ISIS-linked activity on the border. He explained, ever since Biden administration has occupied the White House, there's been a steady flow of criminals as well as terrorists entering our country. It's impossible to tell just how many have actually come into America since he took office. Unfortunately, President Biden's open border policy has invited arguably a cross-section of bad actors into this country. And inevitably, some have terrorist associations with ISIS. It's only a matter of time before these sleeper cells now inside America gain the knowledge and means to create yet another September 11, 2001 Black Swan event. And let me remind you, I think there was only 19 terrorists that took down the trade towers. 19. So far we have 400 that are in our country. So we're not sitting in a good spot. Homeland Security, right down the line with war. U.S. at second highest level threat for terrorist attack as danger increases. Second highest. American soldiers abroad and U.S. citizens at home face perilously high odds of suffering a terrorist attack caused by a Biden administration. I've been reading over and over again that it's only a matter of days before we're going to see a terrorist attack on American soil. And we have no idea where it would hit. A national security expert has revealed this. In his estimation, the American homeland stands at the second highest level of terrorist alert. His estimation comes days after U.S. European Command, which oversees 83,000 U.S. soldiers across the continent, raised the threat of a terrorist attack over the next week to Force Protection Charlie, the second highest level. There are lots of issues that might be at play here, as well as a possible Russian activity in response to the U.S. sponsorship of Ukraine. On Tuesday, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced the Biden administration would give an additional $2.3 billion taxpayer funding to the Ukraine. That comes as Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has asked President Biden for permission to use U.S.-donated Army tactical missile systems, missiles to strike deep into the interior of Russia, significantly widening the war. What's happening in the Ukraine and Russia, what most people don't know, is the Ukraine is just a puppet. It's just a glove. America is funneling most, if not all, of its money and its weaponry. Russia knows that. Russia is being funneled by China also, and Iran. And so basically what will happen is once America steps over the line, Russia will go against America. They hesitate right now, but if we start giving more and more and are attacking inside Russia, that's something that will cause a major war. The force protection levels from the lowest to highest are Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. We are right now at Charlie. Delta is high alert to war. So the risk is very high. Southern border has been wide open for a very long time. Again, millions of people have come in during the Biden administration, an estimated 10 million illegal border crossings. And they're coming from everywhere. Thousands of military-aged Chinese, many from the Middle East, many from North Africa, and then of course the odd lot from the Eastern Europe that we could very well have bad actors in sleeper cells posted around this country near our critical infrastructures. So as we saw on September 11th, it only takes 19 bad dudes to disrupt the entire United States. Potential terrorists continue to swarm over the southern border. Last month, ICE agents arrested 8 illegal immigrants from Kazakhstan with ties to ISIS in Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and New York. Unfortunately, the unacceptable security failures that have allowed individuals with terrorist ties to the United States through the southern border have become an alarming pattern under the Biden administration. This guy's got to go. The affiliated human smuggling ring again reported 400 illegals into the United States. A 2022 George Washington University report on Hezbollah activity in the United States identified 128 individuals carrying out Hezbollah-related illegal activity in Michigan, in California, in North Carolina, and in New York. Of those, 29 offered operational support for Hezbollah, including human smuggling, weapons procure, pre-operational surveillance, and travelers who sought to join the group. So they're evangelists. They're evangelists of Hezbollah inside America. U.S. Customs and Border Protection has encountered 1,700 people on the U.S. terrorist watch list since the beginning of 2023. So far, this year, 425 people. So, sleeper cells, which may lay dormant for months or years before engaging in deadly activity, have proven their lethality in every corner of the globe. And basically, it's coming home to us. 10 signs the global war is rapidly approaching. Everybody's talking about World War III. I think a lot of people will be surprised in America, but there's not a whole lot of people who are watching this that will be surprised that are following it. I wouldn't be surprised. So this asks, are we on the verge of an apocalyptic global war in which billions of people could die? Very few people anticipated, but it came. World War I. It happened anyway. Very few people anticipated World War II. They knew it would happen, but it happened anyway. All throughout human history, there have been wars. Unfortunately, even though very alarming warning signals are flashing all around us, most of the population of the Western world seems absolutely clueless about what is really going on out there. You know, you've heard the media, maybe you listen to it, maybe you don't, but our media in America is just a bunch of propaganda. And all they're doing is doing a cycle of Biden and Trump. I'm tired of listening to it. We get no world news, and we should be getting it because we are uninformed. Leaders all over the planet seem to have come down with a really bad case of war fever, and preparations for apocalyptic showdowns are being made right now. Here's 10 signs that a global war is rapidly approaching. Number 1, Political is reporting that Israel and Hezbollah have both drafted battle plans, and the Biden administration is convinced that intense fighting is likely to break out. Number 2, Iran is warning that there will be an obliterating war if the IDF enters southern Lebanon for Hezbollah. Number 3, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is convinced that a major war with Iran is inevitable because he believes that the Iranians have plans to conquer the entire Middle East. That means actually conquer Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula. He says it's just a matter of time. The Pentagon is moving U.S. military assets closer to Israel and Lebanon to be ready to evacuate Americans as fighting between Israel and Hezbollah intensifies, according to 3 U.S. defense officials and a former U.S. official familiar with the plans. Number 5, past Thursday, Hezbollah sent approximately 40 rockets into northern Israel. Number 6, on Saturday, Israeli aircraft bombed several Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. Did you hear it in the news? No. Number 7, Joe Biden apparently is thinking about approving a plan that would, quote, allow U.S. military contractors to deploy to Ukraine. We put boots on the ground in Ukraine and you're going to see a war with America and Russia. A policy is being worked out to allow the Pentagon to issue private contracts to send troops for the maintenance and repair of U.S. supplied systems in Ukraine. Number 8, Russian President Vladimir Putin is reportedly interested in developing a coalition of nations that would, quote, rival the West and NATO. Number 9, Putin is also warning Russia will need to begin production of intermediate-range nuclear weapons systems. He said last week that he's ruled out a secondary strike, that he's considering a first strike. Of course, the Russians have already more tactical nuclear weapons than anyone else in the world by a large margin. And they've developed brand new Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are so advanced that they aren't even worth comparing to the Minuteman missiles that the United States is depending on, which first went into service in the 1970s. We cannot knock these missiles down. They go hyperspace and they come in and we cannot detect them and we have nothing to knock them down. Number 10, a very influential figure in Russian foreign policy circles is suggesting that the Russians should actually detonate a nuclear device in order to show the world how serious they are. Dmitry Suslov, top figure at the Moscow-based Council for Foreign and Defense Policy, has put forward the idea of Russia carrying out a demonstrative nuclear detonation, a move that could prompt the start of World War III. Suslov made this proposal public shortly after President Vladimir Putin delivered a grave warning to NATO countries. Putin warned that if Ukraine were to employ Western arms for attacks on Russian soil, that's us, it could spark a worldwide crisis, reinforcing his point with threats of severe repercussions. Unfortunately, all of this is happening at a time when 72% of U.S. voters believe that the guy with his finger on the nuclear button does not have the mental or cognitive health to serve as president. In short, we are extremely vulnerable. Right now, we are extremely vulnerable. We are in far more trouble than most people realize, and it's far later than most people think it is. These next several months are going to be crucial, because even if Biden doesn't run, he's going to be a president that has no knowledge of what's going on. Speaking of Biden, I wanted to give you this one. He claims he's such a great Catholic, so I want to give you 5 things Christians should know about the faith of Joe Biden, and I'm going to add some stuff into this. Number 1, he's a Catholic. He says, quote, my Catholic faith is central to how I see the world. It is not. He does not follow his Catholic faith, as you will see in a moment. Number 2, he wears a rosary on his left wrist. Biden's rosary originally belonged to his late son, Beau Biden. Biden's younger son, Hunter, had given the rosary to Beau. Beau died in 2015 after battling brain cancer. Biden said, I have not taken off the rosary Beau was wearing when he passed. Since then, it is my connection with him, Biden said in an interview. That, my friend, is necromancy, communication with the dead spirit. Necromancy is forbidden in Scripture. He also wrote about his son's life and eventual death in his book, Promise Me, Dad. He says, it's not about religion. And he's right, per se, while wearing these beads. It's about a spiritual connection. It makes me feel good. I know he's with me just touching it. That's spiritism. That's contact to the dead, forbidden in Deuteronomy. Number 3, Biden has been denied communion. Catholic Church in South Carolina denied Biden communion because of the former vice president's support for abortion rights. Father Robert Morey, a St. Anthony Catholic Church in Florence, South Carolina, said he denied a communion. He walked up for communion and he turned his back. He would not give it to him. Bully for him. Because he said any public figure who advocates for abortion places himself or herself outside the church teaching. Holy Communion, he said, signifies we are one with God, each other, and the church. Our actions should reflect that, Morey said. Biden refused to comment, calling it a private matter. Number 4, he questioned his faith after the death of his child and his first wife. Seriously questioned it. He said, for the first time in my life, I understood how someone could consciously decide to commit suicide. But wait. Biden said later, Jill Jacobs, his wife, a few years later, helped give him back his life. Not God, but Jill. Number 5, he's considered a friend of Israel. You may not have known this. Of Biden's 3 children, all 3 married Jews. His late son, Beau Biden, was married to Haley Oliveri. And his daughter, Ashley Biden, married Howard Crean, a Jewish doctor. His other son, Hunter, married Melissa Cohen. The couple has matching tattoos that say Shalom. If I'm going to switch, Biden says, religions, I know where I'm going. And he said in 2016 about his Jewish family members and support for Jews in Israel. He would switch being a Christian in order to be a Jew. Wow. He has also talked about his large collection of yarmulkes. Biden says, I am a Zionist, and you need not be a Jew to be a Zionist. Here's Biden's religions. It's no religion at all. It's made up. He invents what he wants to believe and what he chooses not to believe. In short, he has made God into his own image. That's Joe Biden's religion. I want to give you this one, and listen, this is not judgmental. I'm giving you this strictly in a science type of thing. I have no judgment on this, but I want to tell you what the Bible says and what this says. Tattoos and cancer. This is eye-opening. Tattoos seem to be everywhere today. Have you ever felt left out because you don't have one? According to the World Health Organization, the highest prevalence of tattoos is among Europeans and Americans, with 30 to 40% of the population having at least one tattoo. In 2018, a Berlin-based market research company surveyed people in 18 countries. From their findings, 46% of Americans had at least one tattoo, as did 47% of Swedes and 48% of Italians. So are tattoos safe as long as the tattoo parlor is hygienic and careful? A new study finds the answer to be no. Researchers examined the cancer database from Sweden and published their findings online on May 21st with a highly reputable medical journal, The Lancet. You're not going to believe this. Researchers discovered that people with tattoos are 21% more likely to develop lymphoma than those without tattoos. This large-scale study presents a clear connection between tattoos and cancer. Researchers noted that those who first tattoo was less than 2 years old or more than 11 years old were at increased risks of lymphoma, as were those who had laser treatments to remove them. So there's an old saying, just because everyone's doing it, it doesn't mean it's right, or for that matter, safe. And the old saying applies to tattoos as well. Interesting, God's ancient laws recorded in the Bible outline many behaviors to avoid in order to be healthy and have a long life. Not sinful, but healthy. One of those commands is to avoid tattoos, Leviticus 19:28. Now I want to make it clear that I'm not reporting this because I'm against tattoos or that I judge someone who has them, because I don't. I simply want to report what research has found out. Interesting. Well, that's in the news for tonight.